You're tuned in to the MtG Cable cast, where they cover Magic, the Gathering Finance. All right? You don't know about it? You're tuned in right now and get ready to learn some shit. Buckle your seat belts and light a blunt and get ready for the MtG Cable cast. Starring Reptar and Thirsty, them onion head motherfuckers.
Alrighty, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal cast. As promised in part one of our two-parter, this episode is going to be strictly Modern Horizons 2 variants. And the reason we wanted to pick this was for a couple of reasons, obviously. First off, it was a Masters set. Mm-hmm. It was a half reprints, half new, but it's a supplemental product. And one of the things they did with this was they introduced, this was like really the first set of a million variants. Retro etched, retro regular, expanded foil, expanded non-foil, sketch foil, sketch non-foil. Like there were a million versions of every card.
Yep.
And we wanted to now, with the gift of time, take a look at a set which admittedly had an incredibly high impact on Constructed. Not just EDH, but Modern, Legacy. I mean, how many cards are going to get banned? Obviously, I was wrong on the Saga pick. Ragavan was the one, but hey. Anyways, in addition to that, it was incredibly well-selling. So, kind of looking at it as a cautionary tale for what happens with Double Masters 2. Mm-hmm. Double Masters 1 we didn't want to look at because of the ridiculous VIP booster fiasco, where they just printed infinite extra product for people that, you know, had messed up packs that sent in UPCs, and that's not standard. MH2 hit a little bit of its stride with print runs in terms of like post-COVID recovery, sales, everything. We got a few waves of it. It felt like a traditional Masters set that just happened to have a million versions of every single card. So, what does that do to the value of them? Let's dive in.
Yeah. So, from what I saw across the board, it stagnated the price of damn near everything. Unless it was foil, retro, rainbow, whatever that one is officially, like the offshoot.
Yeah.
Because people just didn't like that. So it basically just tanked the value of everything, and we still haven't really come out of the drag from that. It's made things really accessible. It made the fetch lands super accessible for a fairly long time. I think it's still currently anchoring the price of blue fetches, which I think is amazing. And It basically allowed Commander players to pick up the modern cards that they would need to play the format, while allowing Modern players to buy the cards they would need to play that format, and nary the two should meet, really. Sure, you have Esper Sentinel seeing overlap, but Ragavan, not really. Murktide, not really. The like Sarah's Emissary and like Archon of Cruelty, yeah, there's some overlap there, but those are also extremely cheap still in almost every variant. And aside from that, the only other thing that I've really seen Modern Horizons do in kind of a negative space is just create ire for those that maintain SKUs per product because of the sheer number of possible variants and the foil treatment within. Otherwise, I think this did everything it needed to in regards to a master set, and I'm super excited to see what the Lord of the Rings set is going to do, because that's going to be another straight to master set.
It's terrible. I hate it.
You just like Modern Horizons too?
No, Lord of the Rings. I think that's real dumb.
Oh,
hey.
The Universe is Beyond. I do not hold sacrosanct. I don't care. I like Kevin Smith movies are whatever, but in Clerks 2, the scene about walking is spot on.
Whatever. Chasing Amy is a classic.
Yes, it comes before Dogma, though.
That's
like,
fair. Yeah.
Like after Dogma, they kind of go they go downhill real quick, but Lord of the Rings is just walking. That's all it is. I don't care. It's 3 movies of walking. I just want to see what they do inside the set. That's what I'm excited for, because we had Modern Horizons 1 come through, and that like broke Modern in half, and among other things, some culprits still are at large, Urza, and you can see that they really did with Modern Horizons 2 what they wanted to do with Modern Horizons 1, and I'm excited to see what the next iteration did. So, as a vendor, I'm super excited about that set, because Modern Horizons 2, because it just sold. It sells infinitely, and I might sit in some stock for a while of a lot of the B-list cards because they're slow moving, but sealed is going to be gold, and cracking when I need to is still going to be profitable. That set makes infinite. From an LGS standpoint, I imagine the issues are similar, where if you maintain individual SKUs, you have the same problem that a large vendor would.
Yeah, that is fair. I like the set a lot because, for all the reasons I stated in the intro, again, my biggest issue is the number of SKUs. It is the fact that now I, as a vendor, even outside of tracking SKUs, as we'll dive into, some of these prices, the disparity between the variants is outlandish for what the cards are. There is no reason that they should ever cost as much or have as much of a disparity between them as they do. And it's strictly just because, I guess, one's more desirable, but not really, because the liquidity is not there. It's just dumb. Mm-hmm. It's not good for the health of the game. That is a hill I am willing to die on.
I would agree with that.
Financial health of the game, I should say.
Yeah, reskinning the cards is cool and interesting, but when you reskin them 4 times in a set before you start counting foil variations, then it becomes a little much. Yeah. It creates this weird glut on the secondary market, but at the same time, it also does make things interestingly accessible. So, up at the top, when I was looking at this, I didn't consider extended art as a variant in this set at all, because it wasn't unique to this set. We'd seen extended art before for years previous, so I didn't even look at that. And it's weird to say that of all the variations within the set, this was probably the most blasé of the bunch, because it's just extending the borders. I don't think there's a single card that comes in all 3 variants: extended, retro, and sketch.
No, I don't think so.
So it's not like you have that kind of choice to make for a lot of stuff, but you do have usually retro or extended and showcase, which is sketch, or I don't know if anything comes retro and sketch either. I couldn't find anything like that.
No, nothing retro sketch.
Yeah. So when I was looking through this, I really looked at retro border, because it was the second time we got this treatment, and it was actually in the set, like the main set, as opposed to Attack Onslaught. And I looked at sketch because it's the first time we saw that variant. And that's how I came at this set. I came at the 2 unique pieces to this.
I looked at it on a much more card by card basis. So we each, and set up for this, neither of us knew what the other person picked heading into this episode. We each basically targeted 3 cards. So what I did was, because there was one peculiarity with the printing of this set that I really wanted to dive into and see if that made a difference. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that don't know, that's the retro frame non-etched foils. There are literally 2 versions of this, just incidentally, that are the same. Okay, one is done the traditional way that star foils used to be, where the borders are foil and the art is not. So anytime you look at a retro frame on TCG, you get this disclaimer. Please note, due to printing inconsistencies, versions of this card can have either foiling over the entire face or foiling on only the borders, along with foiling color variations for each. You may receive any variation unless specifically noted as a listing with photo. This is something that I didn't think would matter. Anecdotally, at Star City Indy, I had a guy come up with about 30-ish retro border foil fetches, of each. And I was like, what's with all these fetches? Or you're dumping them now? They seem low. And he goes, well, I needed 2 play sets of each that weren't foil in the art to match my legacy deck. Mm-hmm. I had no way of knowing what I was getting, so I just bought a bunch off of TCG Player. That matters. So I just wanted to dive in and see about that.
Yep.
And then I also took a look at basically, there's certain cards that vendors call Japan cards. It's the cards that appear on 95's hot list. It's the cards that have an absurd premium overseas, close to TCG low. Because the neat thing about those cards is the foils typically don't matter. They don't want foils.
Okay.
They just want the base version of the card. And I wanted to take a look at the different versions of that and what the disparity was between the foil and non-foil on those. So that was kind of how I looked at it. More as like peculiarities with the print run itself and market tendencies. And I just wanted to dive deep with those and see what we could figure out, or what I could figure out.
Yep. I stuck with the sketch art and retro, and I didn't really look into foiling for that issue. I didn't want to have to deal with that because I felt it could get pretty muddy.
Yeah, it's awful.
Yeah. But
I don't know why I did it. But here we are.
I'm not going to say it's an exercise in futility, but
stupidity.
Yeah, a bit of that. The one thing I noticed, though, with the retro non-foil and the showcase non-foil is that the movement in comparison to the main set is basically the same. They remain flat at about the same price as the standard version for the most part, except for like Yavimaya. Old Border Yavimaya plays at like 1.5x market than the set, but that has a lot more EDH utility than some of the other cards I was looking at. But that number is a rope, even the market. But the main set number wobbles a lot. And that's what I also saw on the showcase variants. The sketch variants was the same thing. So while the set version of the sketch cards I was looking at. So while the sketch remained the same, which is probably the market is about where its regular set comparison is, it was flat and main set wobbles. And it looks like people were just essentially buying out main set before they moved into some of these variants for the B tier cards. And that's kind of really where I stuck when I was looking at this. I figured if I was going to stay and look at the A-list cards, fetches, Yavimaya in this case, Archon of Cruelty, and like Caldera Complete, then Dathi Voidwalker as well, I'll probably see similar movement across those cards, and it might be disproportionate to retro compared to set, compared to sketch, because all those cards go into legacy decks. Those cards go into vintage decks where people do have a lot of old border cards, and it's just a more of a matching game than it is a personal aesthetic choice.
Fair. So those are your three. Mine were Ignoble, Scalding Tarn, and Murktide. Ignoble being a card that I actually picked coming out of this. Scalding Tarn kind of being that blue chip, blue fetch. This is the most liquid, most valuable, whatever. And then Murktide being the Japan card.
Yep.
And Scalding Tarn specifically was the one that I looked at retro foil and retro etched foil. With Ignoble, it was sketch and regular. Likewise, Murktide. So,
I thought about Murktide when I was doing this. The card that actually, so for the sketches, I have three particular cards I wanted to look at because I figured, again, like if I go for this A-list stuff when it comes to showcases, let me bring this back up. It's like this list is weird. Let's see if this works. Yeah, it's like you have Saga, Esper, Sentinel, Murktide, like you picked up at the top. And then it jumps down to Archon of Cruelty, which I mentioned. Like, these are the main players, Ignoble.
Yeah.
But I went, like, just a step past that to Sarah's Emissary. Like, another, not premier card in Modern, but this is like a...
It sees play.
Yeah, tier 2 deck alongside Archon of Cruelty. And I looked at Thought Monitor, another card that has, like, some great sketch art. And that's where I noticed really quickly that it's just like, okay... rope. You just rope. Except for this little blip where it becomes really popular after Neo on Thought Monitor. Yeah. But the set variation is just wild, man. The market on that is just freaking wild. And the same thing...
over.
Yep. And the same thing with Sarah's Emissary. virtually flat at a zoom out, and then you zoom in, still relatively flat, especially compared to the market of the set version. And I haven't run stock numbers on these, but I'm gonna go ahead and say this is just a lot of people buying out TCG low. They just kind of sawtooth this number. And as a vendor, I think this is a point in time where it doesn't matter what variant I'm looking at in this set and why I'm looking at it. I'm just going to let my buy list speak for me and not try and tune it. I don't think I'm going to try and force any particular variant, and I'm not going to hunt any particular variant the next time this happens.
Yeah. I will say with Thought Monitor, Blip was because 8 cast.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Again,
like right after
Legacy.
Neo.
Yeah, right after Neo when it hit. And I think it's interesting too with these variants. And I'll start with Sculpting Tarn, just diving into the minutia here. So this is a card that sees play everywhere. Modern, Legacy, Vintage, EDH. Probably someone has it in a pauper deck because they don't know these cards aren't legal or banned, whatever. And is just hits the casual, competitive, the whole glut of people. So with the retro frame foils, if you take a look at stocks, it's literally just a flat line. We're sitting at a foil market of around $80 for that. And for the etched foil, our market is literally half. Which was interesting because Modern Horizons 2 kind of went back to that Commander Legends style etched foil that people really liked for some reason. Mm-hmm. I thought it was really dumb and it was hideous, but people loved it. Now, anecdotally, one of the most interesting things about this is that those etched foil Tarns have a cheaper market price than the non-foil regular retro, which, if there's one thing we can tell, and I'm sure this will be true of every variant you look at in this set, etched foils are bad and you should stay away from them.
Yep.
Without fail, except the commanders from Commander Legends. And I think that's because, as a commander, I just want it foil. I do not care what I have to do. I just need it foil. And that's it.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's the most affordable way to do it in some cases, or in many cases, the only way to get it in foil. But what was really interesting was when I basically took a look at TCG Player, the liquidity on last sold, even on the back end, these are selling consistently, both versions, which was surprising to me considering how bad the market value is on the etched foils. But hey, you know what sells? Staples. You know what I tell everyone, and I've said a million times on this podcast? I'd rather have a binder full of fetch lands or duels than just about anything else. Mm-hmm. If I had to pick a binder full of a card.
Yeah.
So the really interesting thing to me was we're not seeing, we're almost a year out now. There hasn't been a real big spike on these cards. On foil fetch lands in Old Border. And I kind of expect if after a Pioneer Pro Tour we get a Modern Pro Tour, that's when this stuff absolutely explodes all over the place. Mm-hmm. That's my guess.
Yeah, there's been a bit of trepidation with no real way to play Modern at a high level in paper. Why continue to buy in? And that's where everything kind of stagnates.
Yeah.
For sure. So, with the difficulty that is the retro frame foiling, and you come away with foil etched, the variants, is that something you're looking forward to again as a main set offering compared to Time Spiral Remastered, which didn't have the etched but had the retro frame as the time shifted slot again?
I think that retro frame, and I love Starfoils. Anyone that knows me in the vendor space knows I collect Starfoils. I love them. I offloaded some of my sets. I still have a few sets left in Starfoil. Man, I would sure love if we didn't get cool retro border cards every single set. I would sure love if we didn't get cool full art basics every single set. please stop. I love them.
Yep.
I just want them to stop.
Yep. That's actually why I filed them under something I disliked, because this was a retread compared to Time Spiral, and it was an interesting experiment to put it in packs to see how well things sell, if they can move the marker on anything, and I'm sure they absolutely did. But the handling of the foils, creating an unnecessary variant, seems like it was a bridge too far for a lot of people to cross. And so you see kind of, let me verify this one, but I do believe the regular Sculpting Tarn, it's flat, but it did take a quick run.
Yeah.
Compared to some of the other ones. It dips, it pulls back, and now we're flat. Right? So we still haven't seen a kind of rebound I would expect from the set version, but as far as like local demand, like anecdotally, I don't think anybody's really cared about anything retro frame really, unless there was a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
I want it to match the rest of my deck. It's got to match my cube, whatever. If EDH,
whatever the case is.
Yep. Exactly.
There is an intent and purpose here to this, and that's what matters.
The other thing I'm worried about is that we might see just this big divide come in somewhere in this stock of cards, where if it matters, it matters, and holds a price because of that, and everything else just kind of dwindles away and rots, which is fine, but now you're wasting this retro treatment on so much trash that it loses its appeal.
Yeah.
That was the other thing I worried about with the retro frame treatment in the main set compared to the time shifted slot within Time Spiral. And it doesn't feel like it was mismanaged, but it feels like it could be mismanaged if they just keep throwing it at us.
Yep. I love it when it's cool and nostalgic and not being jammed down my throat. The point is, you don't try. They're trying.
Oh, absolutely. But I don't know how I'm going to feel about the sketch art in Double Masters 2, but the reason I like the sketch art here is because this is Provenance. This is first to market. The color palettes on these, on a lot of them, look really, really interesting compared to the main set counterpart. Like, there's a lot to enjoy here, and if they don't treat sketches similarly, there's a chance that the rest just fall off into obscurity, and the next time we have this conversation, for me, sketches will be on the downswing compared to where they are here.
Yeah.
So it also seems a lot easier to push, as far as a sales perspective is concerned, sketches when there's one foil variant and you know exactly what you're getting. Although I haven't seen any foil sketches in person, I don't know what they actually look like, if they're difficult to deal with. Like,
they're fine.
I would assume so. I assume it's not that like that one desert that was just like the exploding sun.
Oh yeah,
that was horrible.
Oh, that was so bad. Yeah, the Amonkhet one. Yeah,
that one was buns. It was terrible.
Did you have any interesting takeaways from your picks?
No. Aside from the fact that Modern Horizons 2 has been like absolutely flat, and the sketch art seems to just be roping. Nothing really. Like, I knew there was still some volatility around the regular side because people are still buying what they need. So that Sawtooth that we saw for Thought Monitor and Sarah's Emissary Persist, I don't think I brought up, looks the exact same, is kind of unsurprising from the market standpoint. It really is just how flat a lot of those cards remain in the set. So it was kind of hard to do a deep dive on this, aside from what I've just seen, heard, and experienced as somebody in the space, which is just that, like, people are still buying whatever's cheapest. There's, people will try and match play sets if they need to, and then they'll try and match their decks after that. Aside from that, without having or talking about like hard sales numbers for the set over the last year, it's difficult to throw out like perspective, especially now that we're so far removed, where the uniqueness of the retro frame and the sketch has kind of burned off.
So I think one of the most telling things about this for me, and this was after taking a look at Murktide Region, which is, of course, a Japan card, and also really good in Legacy and Modern, and even sees play in Vintage, which is insane. The foils on this. So the Sketch foil has a market of $32. The Sketch non-foil has a market of $24. The normal foil has a market of $46, with the normal card having a market of $20. The reason I firmly believe this is the case is literally collector boosters. Here's why. A breakdown of Modern Horizons 2 collector boosters. 1 foil etched rare or mythic. 1 foil showcase or whatever variant printing, rare or mythic. 1 sketch or borderless, rare or mythic. 1 extended art, rare or mythic. So at no point in the collector boosters are you guaranteed a normal pack foil of this card. This was important to me to realize because, okay, now I understand that with this stuff, and this is proof positive, it is not about desirability on these. It is 1000% about supply. And so long as we have collector boosters packaged like this, the value exists in the set booster exclusive variants. Because it wasn't just Murktide. It was variants of all the rares and mythics like that had your showcase and everything else. All of them followed that same pattern. Which again, if you want to crack packs for yourself, obviously. No shame. You do it. Right? You go collector booster. But if you crack for value, which is a bad idea and you shouldn't do it, let's not be that guy. It's set boosters. Set boosters are somehow where that value is because of the cards that you can only get there in foil. And that was, to me, one of the most surprising things because, as we harped on, what's going to be the most desirable, that's going to be the one. Nope, it's literally supply. Desire doesn't matter. It's just not there.
Yeah, that's an interesting long-term thought puzzle because up front, people are clamoring for whatever they can get, the coolest versions, etc. So exposing yourself to that chance at a higher rate for hitting, showcase monkeys, for instance, that like the CBBs definitely work out in your favor early on.
Yeah.
But long term, once things become stagnant, it's interesting to see where the EV lies because up front it was basically like the lands and the monkey. And now, if we check Dawn Glare, I wonder if the elementals have moved up.
Oh, yeah, fair. Those are also Japan cards.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take a look at Standard Modern Horizons 2 real quick. Yeah. It's changed wildly because Sculpting Tarn is a $24 card now. So it's Ragavan up front, and then our elemental buddies in Solitude, Endurance, then Saga, Tarn, Esper, Sentinel. So like that list definitely changed. And so it becomes an interesting question where you want to make your money in the short term versus the long term. Yeah. And I think that's a really good and interesting observation that only comes really from looking at the foil. Looking at the non-foils like I did, all I got to see was just volatility in market price and kind of depressed pricing across the board because of like the sheer scale of opening of the set. Not to say that the tier 2 cards aren't in demand. Like we definitely saw an uptick in Thought Monitor and Persist and Sarah's Emissary because they were played in decks, but not enough to actually move the needle above where we were seeing it, which is very surprising.
Yeah.
So.
Always interesting.
Yeah. Picks, you ready?
Let's do it.
Right. I think I'm up this week, which is fine by me. So this week I'm looking at a red EDH staple, so we're back in that department.
We're away from green, though,
yes.
So we're making progress.
Yeah, this one only costs 1 red, so you can play it in your green deck.
Yeah.
Like you play it alongside Omnath because it's Valakut Awakening.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a green card. That's not a red. That's a green card.
It's a land, so yeah, obviously you play it in your green deck. Valakut Awakening is effectively an instant speed, Winds of Change, modal double face card MDSC, and it's one I've been watching for, I don't know, 7 months now. So back in October, CK was buying 192 at $4.20. There were 303 on TCG Marketplace for 414. As of picking this, CK was buying 122 of these. Now they're buying 129. It was 550. Now it's 5 for some reason. And on TCG, there are 277 unique prices at $7 or more, right? Yeah, so TCG player almost doubles up while CK is kind of just lagging behind. So as far as EDH goes, again, this is, like I said, Winds of Change, which is one of the many wheel effects, as we like to call them, and it's instant speed. So this is incredibly useful and is a core red card, according to Rec. It's actually in the top 15 red cards, period, ended. So this is basically foundational to the color. So it's an MDFC, right? So the power of an MDFC is that it plays well at all parts of the game, and it leaves them with an incredibly high floor and a powerful front side, can make them staples in their given color. So you look at like Balagad Recovery is another good one. That's regrowth, right? Yeah. Costs, or maybe it's Ewit. I forgot what it costs, but it's also a green line. So cool, it just slots right in. I'm gonna call this a pseudo wheel effect because you are not drawing back up to 7. It's a pseudo Winds of Change, so you're drawing back up to where you were +1. So as a pseudo Winds effect, Valakut Awakening is as close to a staple in red as you're going to get, short of literally Vandal Blast, Chaos Warp, and Blasphemous Act. You're not going to beat those 3, but this is so close. So close. It's plan and theme agnostic, which is great. We joked about green up front. Yeah, absolutely. It just slots into anything playing red because it only costs 1. And again, it's a red source on the backside. But compared to Winds of Change and other similar quote-unquote wheel effects, inside and outside of red, an instant speed redraw that gives you an additional card with no discard, quote-unquote downside, is both unique and incredibly powerful. And the other thing is, this is just for you. I didn't note this in my notes, but almost every other wheel effect in the game applies to everyone, except for, like, Read the Runes. This is just for you. Nobody else is discarding their hand. You are just resetting. So this can be utilized by any deck with red, and even if you're a Madness-style deck, which is why I put the word downside in quotes earlier, you can still take advantage of this card despite not having the synergy you might actually need. Because you're not discarding them, you're putting them on the bottom. So obviously that doesn't work for Madness. Yeah. Now, I brought the graph up on stocks before, and I'll bring it up now. And we're looking at the entire lifetime of this card. But what I'm going to touch on throughout this is actually the 5-month period where it just kind of sits flat, essentially during COVID, because, people weren't playing a lot of EDH and paper. So in the 7 months I've been tracking this, we saw a 5-month plateau bookended by growth that places the current price 25% higher than the starting price. So that's $4.14 on TCG to $7.40. As a unique price quantity on the open market, as unique price quantity on the open market have been on the decline, CK's buy list quantity has decreased, yet in both parts of the marketplace, that's open and closed, the price has increased. So TCG sale price going up, CK's buy list price had gone up, which inverted a little bit today. So with CK's ratio of buy price to resale at 55%, we are waiting on the open market to force the final bit of movement. In this instance, I think it's fine, as demand looks to be organic and we're seeing steady movement. So 55% basically tells us that CK is not churning a ton of them. They want to buy as many as they can. We see 120. They're moving them at a decent clip. But there hasn't been so much demand that open market demand has shifted to CK to really pull out and make them adjust their buy list. So I do not expect the market price to maintain the same velocity that we have seen within the last month leading to a 50-cent increase, but things are coming to a head, and as the open market price closes in on the vendor price, which is also very important, the open market was about $1 below, we'll see another adjustment. So based on the number of unique price points left before that threshold rises, I expect to see the adjustment in about 3 months. So that's really our timeline. If we were to get in now, that would put our out to buy list at profit in early Q4. But the slowly increasing market price means that trades are profitable almost immediately, though it's a rather small margin.
I think the thing that really sells me on this card, it hasn't been out that long, and it's already a top 15 red card. And I obviously some of that could very easily be recency bias, of course. But it is a very impactful card, and I think the thing about the MDFC cards that a lot of people forget about is how good they are in EDH, because they see a ton of play in Constructed because of the versatility and because there's ridiculous, like, people want to build tin fins in every format they can, or Belcher or whatever, so this lets them do that. But the fact that it has the amount of EDH visibility that it does already, even, sure, like couple, 3 to 6 month timeline, also means if you missed the boat on that, that's fine, because there are a shit ton of ways for this card to improve long term just because of EDH. Yep. And that makes me want to be a little bit more bullish on this. But I think it's good. I also think it is the kind of thing that people have in their trade binders now, today, that are great.
Yep.
And that makes it a lot easier for you. Sure, it's at a small margin, but you can trade for it, knowing that this is more of a long-term thing, if you want to go that route as well.
Yeah, that's actually how I look at this from a buying quantity. So I've been buying these since basically release because I thought they were just underpriced at like the 2 and change. And it's a mix of foil and non-foil because the prices for both of those danced around one another for a while. And if I had more locals to move this to in trade, I'd be happy to like double up on that quantity.
Yeah.
But I went, like I said, with at least a dozen early on with the intent to move 4 or so in trade in time. And that's where I would make my margin right now compared to moving them to buy list, because it's just going to be easier for me to extract that value that way. And I think, to your point, you just hold on to this forever. Like, it's not uncommon to still find a wheel effect in somebody's binder. Like, you might not find actual Wheel of Fortune, but you will see Windfall, and you will see Winds of Change, and in binders. And this is just another one of those. And I don't think it's an unwelcome sight, and there are people looking for this because, as far as the front side is concerned, the worst thing that happens is you cast this card and then draw a card, and that's it. And you just pay 3 for an instant speed, draw 1. Like, that's not the worst.
Fine. Also, reprint value. It is plane specific, which is nice because we've been to Zendikar like 12 times now, so let's not go back for a while,
and
please.
As far as supplementals go, it's an MDFC, so you got to have a supplemental that has MDFCs. And people keep saying WotC has come out and said they will no longer do flip cards for Commander, and I'll believe it when I see it. But for the last number of years, they have not done that, so here we are.
Yeah.
I would assume we go back to Lorwyn before we go back to Zendikar now that the Eldrazi problem has been solved. So, I do not see this getting a reprint in the next year or 2.
Yeah. So, I like it a lot. I think at this price point, it's real hard to lose. So.
All right. Speaking of price points.
Yes. My pick doesn't have one. So I'd originally had a pick for this show, and then some Commander Legends 2 spoilers came out. We're recording ahead of time. So this episode that we are recording will air the Monday prior to the set released for Commander Legends 2. I am so confident in this card that I changed my pick knowing this card wouldn't be out yet. because you know what? Don't care. Card's going to be insane.
Yeah.
So I wanted to pick it as a, hey, when this races to the bottom, pick this card up. And that card is Archivist of Ogma. So what's one thing white doesn't have and everyone always complains about? It's card draw. Well, turns out in EDH, this card will probably draw you quite a few cards in a game.
Mm-hmm.
For white 1, it is a 2/2 with flash, so we're already fine, right? That's a bear with flash for 2 mana.
People played Containment Priest for how long?
Yeah. Whenever an opponent searches their library, gain a life, draw a card. No option, no pay 1, nothing. Just gain a life, draw a card. Anytime you fetch, anytime you ramp, anytime you tutor, anytime you survival, whatever. Every single color has a card, or 30, or 100, that will cause you to gain a life and draw a card off of this. This is very much like, to me, this is the closest thing we're ever going to get to good card draw in white. I think it's even better in CEDH than regular EDH. Either way, this card is really good.
Yeah.
And I would pick up any amount of copies that I can for under probably $3 to $4. Watch our Twitter after the pre-release. When we get prices up on this card and pre-orders up on this card, I'll tweet what my actual buy number would be. Like what price point under which I would pick it up. Because right now, we don't have pricing information on this.
Nobody's...
Which is one of the downsides. Yeah, even Card Kingdom does not yet have this card on their website. Oh, wait, nope, I lied. Spoiler list. It is now live for $19.99, which is too much money. Don't pre-order it for $19.99. It's going to be less.
Yes.
But when release happens and we have that race to the bottom moment, that is when I expect this card is going to be a must-buy. Just incredibly good long-term implications, and that's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, no,
That's it.
I don't know why I dismissed the card the first time I saw it, but then like it got I don't want to say spoiled again, but it got linked again, and I saw it later on. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty decent. There's a term that Richard from Commander Clash used to describe threats like this that aren't overtly powerful, but are still very powerful, but do not demand the same kind of answer that something like Opposition Agent would early on in the game. So it just gets to live for like a little too long.
Yeah.
And I think that is the power of this card. It's an amazing card, right? The power isn't obviously what it does, but the hidden power, I guess, of this card is that it's so non-assuming that it's just going to live for a little too long, even after people learn what this card actually does in a game, because there will be so many other high-impact cards that need to be dealt with, that this is always going to accrue value. And this is, again, another great example of a commander card where, like, you can just pick it up and move it to your locals at worst. Just pick up a bunch of it and move it to your locals, and this isn't going to be something that I imagine you end up sitting on for too long.
Yeah.
This should be a pretty quick turn. So I like looking ahead. I just have pause that we don't have a price on this.
Yeah, $20 is not a real price, guys. That's Card Kingdom pre-order. It doesn't count.
But other than that, I like it because especially we get to hold ourselves to something now. You know, we made a called shot before prices were up, and I think we had did we have the entirety of the set? Maybe we didn't, but you know,
when I picked it, I don't think we did.
Making an early entrance into this, and I like, you know, taking a risk for something like this. So I like it. I'm gonna enjoy looking back on this and seeing what happens to it.
Yeah, should be good, I hope. We'll see.
So, anything else for today?
Nope. All
right, so that is it for this week, everyone. We will catch you next week. We are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. You can listen to the audio version of the podcast wherever you can download a podcast. If you want to reach out to me, I am at Halt I am Reptar on Twitter. You are
at Thirsty Sizzler.
We'll see you next week.